Have you ever stopped to think that sexual life has no age? Many people believe that after the age of 60, sexual pleasure simply disappears, but that's not true. In fact, masturbation in later years can be a powerful ally in maintaining the health of the body and mind. It's surprising how this topic is still treated as taboo, while studies show that maintaining an active sex life contributes to increased longevity and quality of life. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what happens to the body of an older man who practices regular masturbation and how it can make all the difference in your health. Get ready to uncover truths that few professionals dare to address. Sexuality, in old age, still carries many prejudices and social stigmas that need to be deconstructed. Contrary to what many think, sexual desire does not disappear with aging. In fact, older men continue to have completely legitimate and healthy emotional and sexual needs. The taboos surrounding male sexuality after the age of 60 are deeply ingrained in society. People often imagine that after a certain age, men completely lose interest in sex, which represents a significant misconception. Libido does not have an expiration date, and desires continue to exist even as the years go by. Scientific data shows that individuals who maintain an active sex life tend to experience better quality of life and even greater life expectancy. This happens because sexual activity stimulates various bodily systems, promoting physical and mental well-being. Society needs to understand that aging does not mean abandoning pleasure and intimacy. On the contrary, it represents a phase of rediscovery and appreciation of one's own sensations. Older men can and should continue exploring their sexuality without guilt or shame. Age-related prejudices often silence discussions about sexuality and maturity. Many healthcare professionals also avoid addressing the topic, contributing to the perpetuation of this cycle of misinformation and shame. It is crucial to break down these barriers and normalize conversations about sex in later life. The diversity of sexual experiences does not diminish with aging. Each individual has their own journey and pace, and this should be respected. Sexuality manifests in multiple ways, not limited solely to traditional sexual acts. It is important to emphasize that remaining sexually active does not mean engaging in practices identical to those of youth. Adaptations are natural and part of the aging process. The key is to preserve interest, connection, and pleasure in all its dimensions. Building a more positive and natural view of sexuality in later life depends on education, information, and, above all, respect. Only by demystifying taboos can we create a more inclusive and welcoming environment for all individuals, regardless of age. Masturbation in later life represents much more than simply a pleasurable activity. It is a fundamental mechanism for preserving male sexual health, significantly contributing to the physical and emotional well-being of mature men. Scientists and sexuality experts have shown that this practice has surprising benefits that go beyond the simple moment of satisfaction. The male reproductive system requires regular stimulation to maintain its functionality. When an elderly man practices masturbation, he is literally performing a kind of exercise for his genital organs. Sexual activity stimulates blood circulation, oxygenates tissues, and maintains the elasticity of blood vessels, essential aspects for preventing erectile dysfunction and preserving the health of the penis. Scientific studies reveal that sexually active men tend to have a lower likelihood of developing urological problems. Masturbation aids in the natural cleansing of the reproductive channels, reducing the risk of infections and contributing to the prevention of certain pathologies. Moreover, regular sexual activity is directly associated with higher levels of well-being and a sense of vitality. The release of hormones during masturbation represents another fundamental aspect. At this moment, the body produces substances such as oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins, responsible for feelings of pleasure, relaxation, and stress reduction. For elderly men, this hormonal release can mean improved mood, reduced anxiety, and even a strengthened immune system. Interestingly, research shows that sexual activity in later years is associated with greater longevity. Men who maintain an active sex life tend to exhibit more positive indicators of cardiovascular health, lower rates of depression, and higher levels of personal satisfaction. Masturbation emerges, therefore, as a powerful tool for self-care and maintaining quality of life. Sexual practice does not need to follow rigid standards or youthful expectations. What matters is understanding that pleasure has no age and that each body has its own needs and limitations. Masturbation in later life should be seen as a natural resource for connecting with oneself, for self-awareness, and for preserving sexual integrity. Breaking cultural barriers and prejudices about sexuality and maturity represents an essential movement to promote health and well-being. Every individual deserves to experience their sexuality freely, respectfully, and without guilt, regardless of their age. Mental health in old age has a deep and fascinating connection with sexual activity, especially masturbation. When we talk about the emotional well-being of mature men, we realize that sexual pleasure represents much more than just momentary satisfaction. The regular practice of masturbation acts as a true balm for the male soul. Imagine a natural mechanism capable of reducing stress levels, decreasing anxiety, and significantly elevating mood. The emotional benefits go far beyond what one might initially imagine. During the intimate moment, the brain releases a veritable cascade of hormones responsible for well-being. Dopamine takes center stage, generating intense sensations of pleasure and satisfaction. Oxytocin, known as the cuddle hormone, promotes feelings of connection and deep relaxation, combating the loneliness often felt in old age. Neurologically, these sexual experiences stimulate fundamental brain circuits. The nerve impulses triggered by masturbation can act as a mental exercise, maintaining brain plasticity and potentially slowing degenerative processes associated with aging. Testosterone, an essential hormone for men, also responds positively to this practice. More stable levels of this hormone mean greater energy, higher self-esteem, and a reduction in depressive symptoms. It is a natural mechanism of hormonal self-regulation that is extremely beneficial. Experts in geriatrics emphasize that sexually active men demonstrate greater emotional resilience. The ability to experience pleasure and stay connected with oneself represents an important indicator of mental health. Masturbation emerges as a powerful tool for self-awareness and acceptance. It is important to highlight that this process is not limited to the physical aspect. It is a journey of rediscovery where the individual reaffirms their potency and vitality. Sexuality in maturity transcends biological barriers, establishing itself as a genuine expression of life and energy. Society needs to understand that pleasure has no expiration date. Every man carries within him a unique story, filled with desires, memories, and possibilities. Masturbation in later life represents much more than a physical act. It is a cry for freedom, a celebration of existence, in all its nuances. The journey of aging brings with it a series of physical transformations that directly impact male sexual health. Many men are surprised to notice the gradual changes in their reproductive system, but it is essential to understand that these changes are a natural part of the maturation process. Over the years, testosterone levels naturally begin to decline. This hormonal reduction causes significant changes in sexual function, most noticeably in decreased libido and the frequency of erections. However, this does not mean that sexual life comes to an end. On the contrary, it represents a phase of adaptation and redefinition of pleasure. Erections, for example, become less rigid and slower to occur. The recovery time between sexual encounters increases, requiring greater understanding and patience from the mature man. These changes do not represent a problem, but rather an opportunity to explore new ways of experiencing sexuality. The male reproductive system responds differently to sexual stimuli in maturity. The sensitivity of the genital organs can undergo changes, becoming both more sensitive and less responsive at times. It is an entirely individual process, where each man experiences these transformations in a unique way. Masturbation emerges as a valuable tool to combat these physical changes. By regularly stimulating the genital organs, the older man maintains blood circulation, preserves tissue elasticity, and stimulates hormone production. It is a natural exercise for maintaining sexual health. It is important to highlight that these changes do not signify a lack of desire or sexual capacity. They simply represent a redefinition of pleasure, where quality takes precedence over quantity. The mature man discovers new ways to experience sexuality, more consciously and connected to his body. Doctors and sexuality experts generally recommend that men in their later years maintain a positive and open attitude toward physical changes. Acceptance and self-care are essential for navigating this period of transformation with naturalness and well-being. Sexuality remains vibrant and potent, regardless of age. The important thing is to understand that each phase of life has its own characteristics and possibilities for pleasure. Sexual maturity represents a journey of discovery where self-awareness becomes the true protagonist. The ideal frequency of masturbation for men in their later years is a topic that generates many doubts and speculations. Contrary to what many imagine, there is no universal rule that determines exactly how many times a week an elderly man should masturbate. Individuality is the key to understanding this issue. Experts in sexology agree that masturbation should be seen as a natural practice of self-care, not as an obligation or competition. The important thing is that each man recognizes his own limits, desires, and physical conditions. Some individuals may feel comfortable with a higher frequency, while others prefer more spaced-out moments. Scientific research suggests that masturbation 2 to 3 times a week can bring significant benefits to male sexual health. However, this recommendation should not be interpreted as a rigid rule. The quality of the intimate moment far outweighs the quantity of times it occurs. The human body possesses an incredible wisdom of self-regulation. Therefore, it is essential that older men learn to listen to their internal signals. Fatigue, discomfort, or any feeling of pressure are indicators that it is necessary to respect the body's limits. Specialist doctors in sexuality for the elderly emphasize that masturbation should not be seen as a task, but as a moment of pleasure and connection with oneself. The pressure for performance can generate anxiety and undermine the very goal of well-being that is sought. Factors such as health condition, medications in use, hormone levels, and emotional disposition directly influence sexual frequency. A.e. Man undergoing medical treatment, for example, may need to adapt his routine of sexual stimulation. The key lies in attentive listening to one's own body and understanding that there is no single model of sexuality. Each man carries his own story, desires, and possibilities. Masturbation in maturity represents a journey of self-discovery, where respect and kindness toward oneself are the main components. It is important to emphasize that consulting a healthcare professional can help in understanding individual sexual needs. A doctor or sexual therapist can offer personalized guidance, taking into account each individual's history and specific conditions. Dependence on pornographic content in later life represents a growing and delicate issue that deserves special attention. Many elderly men develop a compulsive behavior related to the consumption of online sexual material, turning what should be a healthy practice of masturbation into a harmful cycle of isolation and addiction. Technological advancements and easy access to the internet have created an environment where pornography has become extremely accessible. For mature men who often experience loneliness or a decline in self-esteem, this digital world can seem like a tempting escape. However, excessive consumption can lead to serious consequences for mental and sexual health. The compulsion for pornography in old age often masks deeper emotional issues such as depression, feelings of inadequacy, or a need for emotional connection. Unlike healthy masturbation, this behavior becomes a destructive mechanism for escaping reality, compromising the individual's overall well-being. Specialized psychologists highlight that this dependency often arises as a way to fill emotional voids. Loneliness, so common in this stage of life, can lead elderly men to seek connections, even if they are virtual and artificial. The danger lies precisely in the replacement of real relationships with superficial digital experiences. Symptoms such as social isolation, gradual loss of interest in real activities, shame, and feelings of guilt are commonly associated with this condition. Pornographic compulsion can create a vicious cycle where the individual seeks increasingly more stimuli to achieve the same level of satisfaction, resulting in progressive dependency. Experts recommend multidisciplinary approaches to treat this condition. Psychological therapy, support groups, social activities, and the restoration of self-esteem emerge as fundamental strategies. The goal is not to condemn sexual desire, but to reframe how it is experienced. Healthy masturbation should be understood as an act of self-care, connection with oneself, and a celebration of one's own sexuality. This replaces the compulsive search for artificial content with a genuine experience of pleasure and well-being. It is essential to break the stigma and create safe spaces for elderly men to openly discuss their emotional and sexual needs, free from judgment or prejudice. Sexuality in maturity deserves to be experienced with naturalness, respect, and freedom. Sexual awareness and education in old age represent a fundamental pillar for transforming deeply rooted social perceptions. We need to break the deafening silence that still surrounds the sexuality of the elderly, creating environments where dialogue is frank, respectful, and free of prejudice. Healthcare professionals play a crucial role in this journey of enlightenment. Doctors, nurses, psychologists, and sex therapists must be prepared to address sexual issues with sensitivity and technical knowledge. It is not enough to merely treat physical symptoms. It is essential to understand the emotional and psychological dimensions of sexuality in maturity. Sexual education programs aimed at the elderly are gaining increasing relevance. Workshops, lectures, and discussion groups emerge as powerful tools to deconstruct myths and promote self-awareness. Elderly men and women deserve safe spaces where they can express doubts, fears, and discoveries without judgment. Information becomes the main ally in this transformation. The more knowledge people have about their own bodies, their needs, and possibilities, the more capable they will be of experiencing a full and healthy sexuality. Access to educational materials, guides, and informational resources becomes essential to empower individuals in their maturity. Educational and health institutions need to develop inclusive strategies that consider the specificities of aging. There is no single model of sexuality, and each individual carries their own story, desires, and limitations. Respect for diversity should be the guiding principle of any educational initiative. Technologies and digital media can also be great allies in this process. Podcasts, online channels, and specialized virtual communities represent contemporary tools for disseminating quality information. The key is to create content that is simultaneously technical, accessible, and welcoming. Family, friends, and the community play an equally important role in building a more open and respectful culture. The more we normalize conversations about sexuality and maturity, the more we can combat stigmas and prejudices. Sexual education should not be seen as a taboo, but as a fundamental right of every individual. The journey of awareness is continuous and collective. Each person who is willing to engage in dialogue, learn, and reframe concepts contributes to a more inclusive and compassionate society. Sexuality in later life deserves to be celebrated, respected, and experienced in all its power and beauty. The journey towards sexuality in later life culminates in a message of empowerment and hope. Elderly men need to understand that pleasure knows no age restrictions, representing a genuine expression of life and vitality. The multiple benefits of masturbation go beyond merely physical dimensions, reaching deep emotional aspects. Breaking cultural barriers means celebrating existence in all its complexity, recognizing that each individual carries a unique history of desires and possibilities. Sexuality remains a sacred territory of self-discovery, regardless of age.